Learning photography formally definitely helped to shape me as an artist. What I wasn't expecting that actually happened is that when I began photographing people, I fell in love with that. And I began to realize that there is a very common mentality or mindset among women who are past a certain stage of life. I'm going to use the word in a platonic sense, but less desirable, in the sense that maybe they just didn't have as much value in society. And that was what I was seeing reflected in the way that they would see themselves in portraits. But if there were a portrait on the wall that did more than simply say, this is what I happened to look like on a given day 5 years ago, 8 years ago, 18 years ago, and I no longer look like that.
Welcome to Personal Profiles. I'm Nighat Shah, and today I have with me William Laurence, a portrait artist and a celebrated one, and I have seen his work personally and I have fallen in love with it. Thank you so much for coming to this show.
Absolutely, it's truly my privilege, Nighat.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Certainly. So, born and raised in Southern California, Los Angeles, actually. I pretty much grew up drawing and painting. So I have always had a love of the arts and two-dimensional art in particular. Odd for, a California born and bred kid, but I found a lot of inspiration in the old masters as I was growing up. And so as I continued to develop my art, I really drew a lot of inspiration from historical art and pushed myself constantly to find new mediums and new ways of expressing. And in the end, what that brought me to was needing to learn photography to be able to express myself in a little bit different way. And learning photography formally definitely helped to shape me as an artist. What I wasn't expecting that actually happened is that when I began photographing people, I fell in love with that and have been doing portraits almost exclusively ever since.
That's wonderful. I could have never thought about a photographer can become an artist, like a painter. So you paint and you also do photography.
Yes.
This is something I'm amazed by it.
I actually grew up doing natural media art. And so for me, I actually kind of backed into photography. And then at some point in my career with my studio, I went back to I reintroduced painting and that's essentially where I've landed.
Well, it's wonderful. I love that, what you're doing. And especially, I want to mention one of your projects that you did a couple of years ago for women over 40. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, so my 40 over 40 project, the inspiration behind it simply came from working in my business day to day and realizing that when I was photographing a high school senior, she was all about the camera. And when that high school senior became a blushing bride, she couldn't get enough, right? More pictures, more pictures. But when that blushing bride became a mother, had a family, and now we're doing family portraits. She loved pictures of her husband. She loved pictures of her kids. But her sense of herself in the portraits, no matter how great she looked, would always be less than. And I began to realize that there is a very common mentality or mindset among women who are past a certain stage of life, that when they got into a particular stage of life, they began to feel like they were less attractive, less, I'm going to use the word in a platonic sense, but less desirable in the sense that maybe they just didn't have as much value in society. And that was what I was seeing reflected in the way that they would see themselves in portraits. That really touches on a couple of things. I refer to that as the spoke syndrome. I think of a person, a woman certainly, as being at the hub of a wheel. And each of the relationships, each of the supports that they provide is like a spoke. Yeah. The problem is that so many women have so many of these spokes that are attached to them and that they're supporting. Friends, jobs, family, community service, and all these different roles that they play that they can lose themselves, and that hub unfortunately becomes misshapen. Without proper attention, the hub itself starts to shift, and when it does, the spokes begin to rattle. And before long, the wheel comes off, and now we're no longer going down the road. And so for me, helping a woman to rediscover the core of who she is, not what she looks like,
Yeah.
but the confidence of who she is, her inner brilliance, because there is a genuine brilliance. I just generically call it a magic inside of every human being, inside of every woman at every stage of life. And helping her to rediscover that is the kind of, if you will, self-maintenance that keeps all of those other relationships in her life moving along in a healthy way.
What are some of the like common things you have found while like making portrait and doing the photography for families and for women? Common thing that women are dealing with.
So you've already touched on one of the most important things, and that is simply not thinking about themselves at all. Oftentimes when I will ask a woman, so tell me about you, just a simple, bland, open-ended question, she will immediately begin to say, well, I'm the wife of so-and-so, and I'm the mother of so-and-so, and I work here, and I support this community service project, or whatever the case may be. And she immediately dives into her roles. And when I gently press to begin to understand, well, okay, there was a point at which you didn't have a husband, at which you didn't have children, at which you weren't involved in these different things. What inspired you about life? What lit you up inside? What got you out of bed in the morning, right? What made your interest? Either did you pursue in life that brought you to where you are, or did you put on the shelf, thinking maybe one day?
Do you see a contrast when you ask a man the same question?
Oh, absolutely, and without question. Without question.
They would first talk about themselves. This is my name. This is who I am. This is what I do.
Yes. And when they do begin, most men, and I don't fault them for this, but when they do eventually begin to talk about their wife or their children, it's with a sense of pride of ownership. Now, I believe everyone should have pride in their family, but there's a different kind of pride between a mother and wife and a father and husband. For most men, it's that pride of ownership. It's almost a way of saying, and by the way, check this out.
So I have two-part question next. Where do you see your business to go in the next 5 years? And what do you suggest young people coming into photography like field and artists? They want to be artists. What should they look for?
Oh, so, okay. Can I take the second one first?
Yes.
This is something that frankly I'm quite passionate about, especially right now, because I'm dealing with a set of young artists that are trying to, portrait artists, they're photographic, but they are trying to improve their work, the quality of their work, so they can be more successful. And I firmly believe that one of my greatest strengths is having been trained and disciplined in classic art theory. Having art principles that I can apply to my work makes my work instantly distinguishable from the average photographer. Now for me, even that's low-hanging fruit. My goal is never to even just to make an image that looks pleasing. It's always to say important things about people, and that goes to a word that is almost gone from our vocabulary these days, photographically anyway, and that is intention.
That's true.
Now, when I said earlier that learning to photograph people is what kind of rocked my world, it changed everything for me, and I fell in love with portraiture. It's not because people are just a more interesting subject. It's because if I'm photographing a landscape or a cityscape or a still life, it is merely me, the artist, observing something that is out there, external and detached from me, and kind of documenting my thoughts or feelings about it. But when I'm photographing with a person, there's an exchange of energy, there's personality, it becomes so interactive. And literally, because every human being is unique, every portrait session is also unique. And so I have this rare opportunity to have a window into your brilliance when I'm working with you in front of my camera, to be able to guide you to a place where you really shine, where you feel comfortable enough to show us who you really are.
That,
And that is always brilliant.
that
Always.
that is brilliant in a way, because when you are going to a photography session as a client, as a person who wants to be photographed, you want your photographer to see all of that about you and
Absolutely.
be able to tell you and direct you.
Yes.
That's why director is the king of the film in a way,
Yes.
and the director is the king of the photographer.
Absolutely.
So
Yes.
I totally get it now. Totally. Yeah. Why some photographers make sense and why some don't,
Yes.
in a way.
And honestly, feel a soapbox coming on,
Yeah.
but that really hurts my heart, honestly, Nighat,
Yeah.
because there are people who have the strength within to say, you know, this is maybe a mistake. Maybe it was just a mismatch between me and the photographer. Let me try a different photographer. Let me try a different day. Maybe it'll be better. But there are a great many people that when they see a bad photograph of themselves, they don't blame themselves. Sorry, they don't blame the photographer, and they don't blame circumstances. They say, whether they ever say it out loud or not, they say, well,
I look awful.
I just must not be very attractive.
Yeah, I'm not a
And
photogenic.
they begin to retreat. And what happens is, even if it's very subtle, that's a hit to their confidence. And because they're now walking in less confidence in the world, they're sharing less of their gifts with the world. They're more hesitant to share what they have inside. This fundamentally is why I am so passionate about what I do. Because I believe that if I can help someone to see themselves differently, then they begin to live in the world with more confidence. And when they do, they share more of their gifts with the world, and everyone gets better. It's not about making someone look good.
It's the feeling.
It's the feeling of a person in community, so that all of society begins to improve as each of us begins to show up in a different way in our world.
And William, one thing I always ask is, what do you think that Memphis, what do you think Memphis is doing good for the artistic community, for artists? And if they're not doing anything good, do you think, do you have some suggestions they can improve?
Well, I know that the art walk that happens downtown is a great opportunity for businesses, for businesses that have any relation to the arts, is certainly helpful. I know that the relocation of the Brooks Museum, which is a fabulous museum, and has wonderful, very, very, very wonderful programs kind of across the board. Interactive programs for children, ways to enjoy music. So in addition to simply coming in and looking at still art, bringing artists and artist exhibitions from across the country, all of that is great and wonderful. Honestly, I would love to see more of what I call the grassroots kind of societies in Memphis, places for artists to gather. There is an organization for photographers in Memphis, but for me, the feeling of that is just a little bit different, very necessary, very helpful, but the feeling of it is it's more attractive to someone who is starting out in the business and just wants, maybe a pat on the back or to learn how to execute some cool technique, right? But in historical art, there were salons, and salons were a place where artists could exhibit and then be critiqued. And
By peers.
Yes, and in today's vernacular, critique is a negative word, but actually it should be a tool to help us improve.
Of course, it should be encouraged.
Absolutely.
Yeah, to improve.
So in an environment in which artists can come and one, feel safe, that they're welcome. Their style doesn't have to be someone else's style. Their look doesn't have to be someone else's look. So they're welcomed, but also understand that it's a rigorous environment in the sense that we're all genuinely committed to helping one another be better.
How AI is disrupting this industry, and how do you see it impacting like photography and art positively, or is it eating the essence away?
Great question, Nighat. I am actually I'm in kind of a third camp, if you will, in that I don't see it as necessarily positive or necessarily negative. What I see is that there are purists who feel that the value of creating a photograph is in rendering something accurately. And for those purists, AI is without question a disruptive technology. No question. Because it can faster, better produce something that is photorealistic with minimal effort by someone who knows nothing about a camera. Now that's the flip side of this. And that is that there are people who are highly creative that now have tools with which to explore and experiment and realize their own creativity. And so there's a tremendous positive aspect to that. And frankly, I believe a lift to community that AI is actually making room for and creating opportunity for more people. It's actually, if you will, egalitarian in that respect. So in the end, what has to happen is that someone for whom AI may be disruptive in a negative sense, they have to adapt.
Agree.
They have to adapt.
It can be positive. I mean, it depends how you gonna use it.
Absolutely. You referenced, portraits on the wall and how we see ourselves in pictures so often these days. I think of that portrait on the wall as being like a magic mirror.
That's true.
Right? A magic mirror that, unfortunately for a lot of people, when they look at it, subconsciously asking the question, the answer that they get is no.
That's not me.
It's you're not really the fairest of them all. You're not you're not really all that. You may think you are, but sorry to burst your bubble. But if there were a portrait on the wall that did more than simply say, this is what I happened to look like on a given day 5 years ago, 8 years ago, 18 years ago, and I no longer look like that. If instead it reflected the beauty of who you are, if it showed you I am strong, if it showed you I'm resilient, if it showed you I have a vibrant personality, and I always have, then it actually encourages you to live into that more and more and more day by day. And that, frankly, is something that AI, no matter how good the technology gets, will never, ever be able to do.
One last, I was asking you about any word of wisdom for the young generation.
So I say for them, learn from those who have come before you.
I agree.
True creativity is not simply expressing yourself in whatever you feel is du jour, right?
Like they say, learn the rules first before you can break them. So
absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. This is a little known fact, but take someone like Van Gogh, whose work is extremely avant-garde, the work that we're familiar with. He was trained as a classical painter. He was able to reproduce works that you would swear were made by, a Bouguereau or a Vermeer or any one of the more kind of realistic classical painters. He was trained classically. He learned and mastered all of the fundamentals before he began in controlled ways experimenting with breaking those rules.
Yeah, totally. Thank you.
It's truly been my pleasure,
It
my
was a
honor.
very good conversation. I learned so much about photography and art and painting. Thank you.
Excellent. I am so glad, and it is always a pleasure talking with you, my friend.
Thank you.